I mean, in 1978, I was having. I can't give you chart positions, but the records were in the charts. All the records have made the charts. If you get on a wider scale, then obviously I'm not as well known as a lot of people that you can name, like I don't know, Toto or Michael Jackson or Tina Turner. But there's enough people that know me. I mean, you can't come to America and sell out Radio City or Red Rocks or do how many shows in Philadelphia or Boston or Kalamazoo or Austin or Houston or you name it. You can't do that if people don't know you. So, because obviously I'm not a megastar, but I'm obviously, in order to come to America so often and tour so extensively, I must be known.
Yeah. Would you like to be a megastar?
No, not. I don't want to be Michael Jackson. But I do want lots more people to know my music.
Yeah. I read somewhere, or heard that they quoted you as saying that you'd rather be known as a songwriter than as a singer.
A lot of these things that are said are taking things from, my first tour in 1973, and people don't sort of gen up. They don't keep themselves informed, and when they say things like, oh, she's very quiet doing interviews and she only answers yes and no, they forget that they're not talking about 1985 or even 1978, they're talking about 1973. So it gets a little bit silly sometimes.
In Berkeley here, I know that from when you've played before, in the Bay Area, that a lot of women go to your concerts, and sort of like a lot of feminists.
I'm not a feminist. I actually object to having that term used with me because it limits what I'm doing. I get little 10-year-old kids, boys and girls, coming to the show. I get blokes coming up and saying, whatever they say about the songs, and women come up and say whatever they say about the songs. And the songs are written for people. They're not written for women, they're not written for men, they're not written for children. They're written for whoever.
I didn't think that, but why do so many people think that?
I have no idea why. Again, I mean, even if they tried to refer back to 1973, even in 1973 it wouldn't apply, because I've never applied my music to any one thing. I've never supported any sort of movements or anything like that. I'm not interested in things like that. Yeah. So I don't really know why they would do that. But then it probably would be the same as them saying, well, she's folky. I've never been folky, but they've got that.
That's probably from the first album, right?
The first album isn't folky. Well, how I decided that must have come about was when I started to be a solo artist at that point. It tended to be folk people. And because I was a solo artist, I was labelled as a folk. Obviously, I have to say that if people labelled my music as folk now, they would be utterly deaf, really. But when you listen to the very first album I made, which was 1972, it has a strong band, and the songs are written and arranged for a band. And also, if you listen to the Joan Armatrading album, I wouldn't say Love and Affection was folky at all. I wouldn't say Show Some Emotion was folky. Kissing and a Hugging or Join the Boys. It's hard to think of all the songs, but there's a stack of songs that I wouldn't for the minute say were folky. Probably, if you wanted to say one of them was, it would be maybe something like No Love for Free. There's a song called No Love for Free, which probably might be folky, but I wouldn't label the music as that. I think in terms of folk as being like sort of Fairport Convention, or to me that's folk.
Well, speaking of Fairport Convention, didn't you have someone from Fairport Convention on the first album?
Yes, I have to say that I don't actually know Fairport Convention's music. Having said that, no, I've never owned a record, and I don't know if I'd recognise if I heard it on the radio. But Jerry Donahue and Dave Mattox, who were in my band in 1976, were in my bands. I write and arrange my songs myself. I don't get any sort of interference on that, only because people know I can do it, and I like working with lots of different people, and I always put the bands together myself.
Yeah. Who's in the current lineup?
Well, there's nobody from the last band, and it's nobody from the album. Totally different people.
You had Thomas Dolby a couple of years ago, right? Or 3 years ago now, is it?
On the album, yes.
Just
Not in a band.
Yeah. And how did you come across him?
Well, when I'm making albums, I generally get the producer to recommend different people, and then the final decision is mine. So he'll say, this guy does so and so, and you so and so and so and so. And if I don't know him, then from the information I get, then I'll say, well, we'll try this guy or this guy. So it's usually from a bunch of names, you know. And so that's how I would have met Tom, through Steve Lillywhite, who came up with several synth players, and we would go with Tom. He's excellent.